Good evening. I would like to call this regular work session of the Loveland Board of Education to order at 6 p.m. and ask our treasurer for a roll call.
Reverend Eilert.
Here.
Dr. Lorenz.
Here.
Dr. Schwetznell.
Here.
Mrs. Washburn.
Here.
All board members are present. Also present in the board office conference room are some of our administrators, superintendent, treasurer, assistant superintendent, director of human resources, director of communications, and we also have district counsel Gary Stedronsky with us. We will be opening the meeting here in this conference room. We will be moving to another conference room if the board votes to go into executive session. This meeting is being recorded but not being live streamed. We are recording the opening and public portions of the meeting. We will come back after executive session and record the closing of the meeting. And if tradition follows as it did the last time, we will have that recording of the meeting up on the website tomorrow. So that's how quickly it will come. And these are the parameters that we had set at the beginning of the year for work sessions that we would be working in the board office. We have at this point made sure that there's a notification on the door of where the meeting is. The doors are unlocked, and so the meeting is open to the public. The first item on our agenda would be an adoption of the agenda, so I'd ask for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Ooh, that was a tie.
I think it was a tie. I'll give it to Dr. Swetchnow.
What you get for being away so long.
So are there any questions about the agenda? There are a couple of resolutions and a discussion item, but the major portion of the meeting we will be asking to go into executive session. So, any questions? Mr. Giffret, do you have a question?
Yeah. Could you check that and make sure that we have every section of 121 on there that we need to have to go into executive session? I didn't realize that might be missing one component. Meeting with legal counsel, is that a different section?
No, there's no
Requirement?
pending or imminent litigation, so that's fine.
Very good, thank you.
Okay,
Sorry.
very good. Mr. Giffret, can we vote on that?
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Dr. Schwetznell?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes,
Thank you.
motion carried. We have 2 minutes resolutions. They are the minutes from the July 18th special session and from the July 26th special session. Shall we do those separately, Mr. Giffret, or can we do them together?
We can do it either way.
And that's because there's a change in the requirements, right, that we now have to approve them in meeting after the work session.
We are supposed to. We're not always able to, but these were ready. They were quick enough to have these minutes ready, so yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right, well, let's do them separately, since they're on the agenda separately. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for July 18th?
So moved.
There was a tie, right?
You can have it, I'll second.
All right, Dr. Swetchnow moved and Mrs. Washburn seconded. Reverend Eilert, you're gonna have to be quicker on the next one. Any questions about those minutes? Mr. Giffret?
Dr. Schwetznell?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes, motion carried. And I'll make a motion that we approve the July 26th Board of Education special session minutes. Is there a second? Second.
She's totally front
I
right
know.
No second? I guess we're not gonna approve
now.
them.
I wasn't here for
second,
that
didn't I?
anyway, so
Okay.
it's
I said
probably
second.
better
Oh,
for
I didn't hear
someone
you.
else, so.
All I heard you was arguing about me
We were,
getting in
because she was
first.
Because we had a
Straight.
plan since we
I
timed
know.
before.
You really blew us up.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Any questions about those minutes? We're having entirely too much fun. Mr. Giffret?
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes,
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Dr. Schwetznell?
Yes.
motion carried. We'll now move into, as proposed, a district branding discussion. Before we do that, I just wanted to mention that I have handed to board members homework this evening, some material I have collected about code of conduct, code of ethics, philosophy of education. I would like to be able to have a discussion at our next meeting regarding how we would like to proceed with that part of our policy. So I've given you some examples, just things that you can look at. You're
At our
welcome to
next
find
meeting?
more.
The
At
next
our-
work session or next meeting?
What date?
August 22nd. You do not have to be prepared to have a full discussion. You need to come prepared to let me know what else you need, how you would like to proceed with this. There's a lot of material there.
And just in brief, our current policy is very old, and this one in particular is in need of updating. So let's look at some other contemporary policies to try to figure that out.
It's also one of the policies that completely belongs to the board, and I don't know that it has to be in policy. It could be a code of conduct that we attest to, a code of conduct that is part of our oath of office, that kind of thing. But that item, and then also how we would like to proceed with the tax committee, should be items that you're prepared to discuss on August 22nd. Again, not prepared for action, not prepared for things to go forward, but if we don't put these things on the agenda and talk about them, then they kind of slide out of our reference.
Since
Our
Gary's
next-
sitting right here, can we ask him just real quick, are they generally part of policy or, you know, are there exceptions, but?
Neola includes them in like the bylaw section of your policies, but they wouldn't have to be a policy.
So
There'd be
do-
no legal requirement that you have that.
So does OSBA, and in fact, I think Neola's policy is very close to what OSBA's is. I think they got it from there, so. You'll notice in the packet that I also did a artificial intelligence generated code of conduct, so you can see what that might be like. Final thing for our next meeting, I did, you'll recall at one of our recent meetings, we had a little trouble recording. And I just wanted to let everyone know that when we have trouble recording, when things don't go as we had hoped in a meeting, I know that, at least for me, it feels like, oh, this is another problem, here we are having a mess. And so I did ask for some metrics, and in over 84% of our 19 meetings that we've had so far this year, we've had complete success in streaming and recording and everything. So I know we'd like to get to an A instead of a B, but just to let you know that when we're in the midst of trying to figure out about some recording things, it's not quite as dismal as it seems while it's happening.
And I would also just, if you don't mind me responding to that, I would also point out that we're going above and beyond what the requirements are for that. All of that is done in extra in order for purposes of complete transparency, and there's no requirement that we do any of it. So I think that 84% is well above a grade B.
Okay, thank you.
It's on a curve.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. It's the advanced placement,
Right.
so we get a bump for that.
B's and A.
Yeah, it's weighted.
Maybe we should ask our director of curriculum, really.
All right, so we'll move into the branding discussion. This also is not an item that we need to come to any conclusion this evening, but we've got a presentation, and I don't know who's gonna lead it. Mr. Broadwater, are you gonna lead it? Mr. Setters? I know we've got branding guide, we have Mr. Stadronsky here, so we can get some facts out on the table and then make some plans to move forward or say where we are.
I'm happy to start and just give a little bit of context. So over the last year or so, I've worked with the designer to really just kind of make sure that our logos and our brand identity is solidified, make sure that we have the most up-to-date file types. The stuff that I inherited was a little hit and miss. So we kind of unified things, made some slight tweaks to get a set of files that work for everyone. With that, developing a brand guide, which is really just a tool. So when we ask someone to create something for us and represent our brand, they have the exact color orange that we like to use. They have some guidance on not putting it, not compromising the logos or stretching them or distorting them in any way. It's a pretty standard tool for that. So that's kind of just what I've done, just so we have some, everything that's outward facing looks pretty consistent. Along with that, we've had some inquiries about whether or not people can use our logos. I know the board received a message about one particular instance. I've had somebody reach out and say that they wanted to offer some stuff for sale. Would they be able to use our logo? Generally, like when we are asking somebody to create something, they have our blessing, obviously, to create it. But I think it's worth having a discussion. I think previous people in my position have kind of started to have this discussion. Do we take the steps to trademark and those kinds of things? And I've kind of initiated that conversation with Mr. Stodoronsky about this. He's more versed in it than I am, but really just being able to have that discussion. Do we want to take those steps? What are the pluses and minuses?
And I do think we have a policy, but it says something to the effect of the board may allow the use of branding items, but it doesn't give any specifics of what procedures to follow, who, what, where, when. It just says we may. And so it's pretty difficult for the board too, to be able to answer the question of can you use it, can't you use it kind of thing.
I think, and thanks to Andrew, but I think the first step was what he did with the guides, so we know what we're trademarking to begin with. And so we presented that to all of our administrators, all of the administrators that work with different vendors, so now they'll be able to get it out. We know which orange, there's a lot of different oranges, we know which orange we're using. So that's the first step, and then that leads us into this discussion in terms of what is the next step, whether it's trademarked or not. But thanks, Andrew, for getting that together.
So Gary, is it okay if I ask a question of, if we aren't trademarking, do we have any ability to allow or is anybody required to come to us to ask us to use the logo?
So they are and they should. So even just creating the logo, the LPOG, you then hold common law trademark rights to it. So upon its creation, those come into existence. You don't have to do anything about that, right? They exist and belong to the board. What you're talking about is registering the trademark. And so you can register it with the state of Ohio. You can also register it with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office in Washington, D.C. And that registration puts people on notice, in theory. At least they can go out and search the databases and see, okay, who owns this, right? So that's what the registration does, puts everyone on notice. It gives the board greater rights, greater protection in the trademarks if you have registration, so then that there's no confusion. And is there going to be another district that creates the LPOB? Maybe not in the state of Ohio, but maybe so with the Tiger, right, that you have. If we've uniquely created that, we don't want another person or entity to steal that and use it. If you haven't registered the trademark, then there could be a battle over, well, who really does it belong to, right? If we've registered it, that date is solidified, we know as of then, the whole world is on notice that it's ours. And so you're much better off if you do take that extra step and register.
And can I ask you, the follow-up question for that would be, do we have any knowledge if these are even trademarked by other entities at some point in, say, Louisiana?
Yeah. So that opens up another discussion on whether or not you should even seek to go federal with these things. Most of our clients in Ohio will just register with the state of Ohio. And so that's a much easier process, even cheaper. You can register with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and then you get much more into the area of, well, does this look like somebody else's? And so we had done it 12 years ago maybe on a district in the area whose mascot was the same as an NFL team's in terms of the name. It did not look a thing like the logo for the NFL team, but for some reason that district wanted to take the step and register it with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. We filed that, got an objection from the NFL, who handles this for the teams. Wound up working it out because you can't get confused between the NFL team's logo and the local school district's logo, so we got it worked out. But you might not be as lucky. This could, lots of schools, so we're not even talking just professional teams, but colleges as well, use this type of logo and they might object. Another good question for me would be, well, did we actually have this created for ourselves? Did someone create it here? Because you will often see school districts around the country just poach a logo from a professional team or a college team, in which case there's a problem there. But so those are things to think through.
What kind of cost is involved in the registration in Ohio?
Just from the state, it's cheap. Per trademark, it would be, I think you're talking the fee, last time up, maybe, it's under $200. Now you have a lot here, and if these would be handled separately, you may not need to trademark all of them. We do have some clients who have done what Andrew had on here and made like an individual logo for each school. So you have the LES, LPS, LECC, but you know the question for the board is: do we really need to register that? Are we worried about another entity stealing those? Because that's pretty specific. So the main logos are what you should be most worried about, and I'd say, you know, for as cheap as it is, to at least put everyone on notice through the Ohio filing would be good. If you want the whole world to be on notice, then that's the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office filing. But many of our clients just aren't concerned about, you know, a Louisiana person coming in and using the logo, because it's not likely to happen. Although it can happen if you get we've seen this, you get a sports star who is, you know, in high school gonna be a #1 draft pick or, you know, that sort of thing. You can't see that.
And just to review, you kind of referenced the fact that we already have innate protections just by the fact that we've designed these ourselves. How much more protection or strength of ownership does it give us to register with Ohio?
Well, it avoids the battle of, so if somebody else had used a very similar tiger and they see this and they come complaining to Loveland Schools and saying, you know, you're using our trademark. We're saying, well, no, we're not. We made this on our own, right? If neither one are registered, then it's a battle of trying to determine, well, whose is whose. If it's registered or one of them's registered, then you actually know, well, as of this date, we had these protections. So that's what registration would do. And then the whole second part of this is policing the use of the trademark. So even if you just hold on to your common law rights and don't register, or you register, you still need to police the use. And so that means approving people or entities that wish to use these logos. And if you see people using them who don't have the authority or haven't been approved, you need to reach out to them and tell them to stop, or else you can lose your trademark rights. So you created these things and let the whole world, you know, it's pretty much going to be the city of Loveland or the rest of your district use it, then you're going to lose those rights, and they'll be open. And so I had given Andrew 2 different logo use right agreements. One was basically, they both do the same thing, just basically give stores, you know, the ability to use your logo and sell them. And so you might think of one's for like a flat fee. A mom and pop shop in downtown Loveland might want to use your logo, and you say, okay, for a flat fee of $500, you can use our logo, and you get these protections. You, being the school district, get these protections in the agreement. If you had a bigger store like a Kroger or, you know, a Fanatics type store that wants to sell these more globally or on a much larger scale, then there's a percent of sales agreement that I had given to him, and you know, we might take 10% of all sales or whatever you come up with.
In those agreements, is there also the ability to have a licensing policy that gives the district, wouldn't have to be a board policy necessarily, but gives the district the ability to say to a PTA, you don't have to pay the $500 every time you want to make a t-shirt with LECC, you know, because they do those for the kids, often for all the kids, they do it for the year. And so we wouldn't charge them a fee, correct? So there would be a
Yeah, so you don't have to charge a fee. It's just going through the step of asking and getting the approval. And maybe you say, you know, nonprofit school support organizations can use our logo without charge, right? Something like that. And so that might be in policy or maybe a part of these brand guidelines. You know, if the board approves it, it doesn't matter if it's in an actual policy on your website or in the brand guidelines. It has the same effect.
Right. No, that's what, I wasn't really asking for a policy, I was asking
Yeah.
more for a procedure or a guidebook. And that would be handled through the communications department, or that would be handled through, would the athletic department be a part of this, or?
Maybe both, I don't know. It depends on what is probably quickest in terms of people getting approvals for it. You know.
Well, and then let's kind of dive into the weeds a little bit on uses that the school would approve of and not approve of, and then how do we go about making sure that decisions are made on that. So, and I'll just make up, we clearly approve of the PTA making t-shirts for kids, and again, as a made up thing, we clearly don't approve of people gambling with the L logo. or selling medical marijuana. or
Putting it
whatever.
on a beer can or something, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So part of the agreement says we get the approval authority over what items they would put it on or use it for. So you'll have that approval authority through those to help ensure that, you know, the beer can example doesn't happen.
Right. So like a mom and pop store or entity could ask for a blanket, you know, spiritware, you know, clothing items, mugs, pencils, whatever kinds of things. They could ask for a set of things, and you wouldn't have to go policing, well, they can't use the on the beer can.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, there are probably companies out there right now, if we did a search on the internet, where you could find your logo on any item that you wanted, including underwear, and we've seen that from some of our clients and objected and told them, hey, take this off, you don't have our authority. And so those aren't your mom and pop shops, it's just somehow, you know, these stores on the internet pick this up and offer anything and everything for sale.
Right, so that's, we would have to go through that once we do a licensing procedure, then we would have to sort of catch up to wherever we are.
Right, yep.
But then that would give us the authority to say, but we don't permit the use for advertising that you are the moving company of the Loveland School District, or you are the, I don't know, some other, the real estate agent of the Loveland School District, or
Right.
something like that.
Well, I think you had I think you got a message a few months ago from someone asking to incorporate a logo into their company's
Right.
name or logo. And to my mind, something like that would probably never be something that would be authorized.
Right, yeah. It does give the appearance of an endorsement as well when you allow it to be used, so.
And then the district, I would think, is faced with the notion of, well, then if we allow every realtor in Loveland to use it, then does that dilute even the value of using it, you know? But if you let one, don't you have to let them all, that kind of thing? If you let one kid do something, you have to let your other kids do it too.
Sell it to the highest bidder.
Right.
Recoup our $200 registration cost.
Yeah.
Keep tuition low.
Sure.
Okay.
So
So
yeah, I
anything else
think,
you think we should know?
no, I mean, the policing is the big thing, like our clients don't understand, and you can, you know, they'll drive around town, see these things, and, I mean, I could go into Kroger right now where I live, and they'll have shirts from my school district, and I guarantee you they never sought approval, but they're selling them in there, and in theory, we should be policing that, because there is a concept under law where you could lose your rights. I think it's pretty difficult to lose your rights, but if you're blatantly aware of things and just let it go, then that's where you can. And so that's probably, it's usually just a letter to the company saying, hey, you don't have our approval, you know, please stop. Or if you would like our approval, we have this form, you know, you can sign. It's a contract, and we'll give you that approval, and there might be a small fee, or if you're gonna give it to them for free, you could.
Gary, is there any difference between the risk of losing your rights as they stand right now and not policing it, and trademarking it, or registering the trademark and not policing it?
It would be easier to lose your rights right now.
Okay. So if you take that step, you're more protected.
Yeah.
And Andrew and Gary, both, your recommendation would be to minimize the amount of filing to the state, but like the LPAW or the Tiger representation, 2 or 3 different things is what you're suggesting?
You have more than that in here, I think, that I, like this whole page I would do, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 logos right there, those seem to be your main ones. And this is where, you know, each individual schools are a little different, and kind of a cartoon type tiger. Maybe you don't need to do those, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4 more if you wanted. And then all these too.
Well, and I don't know that, I think those are really just the ways that they're displayed. I was thinking more of the LPAW and the Tiger, and, you know, some of those is their individual elements.
Yep.
Rather than every image that's in that guide.
Yeah.
Needing to be, but that's more.
So you could create the overriding guide as, I mean, do you know what I mean? The overriding elements that are the licensed or trademarked ones, and then the combinations of those trademarked can be used in this way, something like that.
Yeah, he's got 12 that are basically the same, but with different color combinations.
Yeah, and I don't know that, I mean, so if we have the Paw and the tiger, do we need to do the whole masthead that has the Loveland logo,
So
considering it's made up of the constituent
Right.
parts?
What I'm
those
thinking,
kind of
we
things.
got two separate Paws, we have two separate tigers.
Mhm.
And any mixture of it, I would think like our LPS there, because it has the L and the tiger, seems
Yeah.
like it would fall under that.
Yeah, you could almost maybe do the cartoony tiger with the L without the
Yes.
initials in for the schools, and then hope you're covered there. I don't think anyone throwing in LES after that, really does much for them, since
Yeah.
this other one's on. So I think we can help minimize this,
Okay.
to try to keep
But
the
even
costs down.
still, even if we're doing it at, you think around $200 an image,
I'm thinking it's 150 the last time we did that, but don't quote me.
things go up, so. And is there any danger that we have not discussed of not having it registered and not having a guide for usage? In other words, is there any damage that could come to the district if someone uses it on a beer can? And we don't have it registered, so we can't police, we can't say, you can't use that.
Yeah, the danger is you just then lose it, and it's open for anyone to use, or the other person using it has sort of taken over the rights to
Right.
it.
But there's no danger, for example, if a moving company uses it and somebody doesn't like the moving job they did, there's no damage that comes to Loveland because they used the LPAW.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? Well, I would suppose then, from the nodding of the heads that I saw, that we'd like to have a resolution come to us of, what it means to register these, and a look at the guide and the licensing agreements, and have the board resolution bless that, and then we can move forward.
Yeah, I think that's the appropriate next step.
And it might be helpful to have some guidance on, I know Gary talked about fees for usage
Right.
and what the target would be as far as how you differentiate between, I think your example was a mom and pop shop versus a big chain.
Right.
If there's kind of direction from the board on what you'd like to see with that, my thought would be to keep the fee as low as possible, because I don't think the licensing fee is not a revenue generator
Right,
for us,
right.
and it shouldn't be prohibitive for, there's a lot of people who run small businesses that might wanna sell spiritware. I
Right,
wouldn't want that
but
to
there,
be
but there
cost
should be a
prohibitive.
fee so that then people can say they are a licensed distributor of
Yes.
Loveland
And
goods.
we've got our own nonprofits that we would wanna come up with some sort of
Yeah.
policy with as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think if they have our blessing in that regard, that's
Well,
good.
but let's go back and explore that a little bit more, and it's not something I've really thought about, and nor do I have any idea what the market size is. Is there value to the school district to using that licensing to have a fee? Meaning, somebody wants to use it for being a realtor, or being a mover, or being a landscaper.
I don't know that, I think the problem with that is the inherent endorsement of the services that person provides. So if you say, yes, you have our blessing to use our LPAW on your, let's say Loveland Moving Company, and you've got the LPAW in it. And to Kathy's example, somebody is unhappy with their experience with that company, does that then reflect poorly on the district? I don't
Even
know
if there's
that
not
that-
liability, there's still a perceptual
Yes.
damage that can be done, that why mess with that?
For that little amount of money, and I have no idea what that money would be. On the other hand, and again, this isn't the right example, but Tri-Health is the official partner of the Cincinnati Reds. There's a lot of money to be made in that. Is there value to us saying we're going to try to expand our reach and bringing in revenues from non-tax sources?
I think it's the flip side. I think it's simply, if we wanted to get into a way in which a company is sponsoring something for Loveland, that's the avenue with which you wanna do that, so that instead of our brand being on their stuff, their brand is on a stadium or on a whatever, I think that's generally the direction that goes more for schools in general, right? I mean,
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
yeah, schools can have licensing agreements or naming rights deals, like your stadium could be Tri-Health Stadium of Loveland City Schools, if, that happens.
But in general, we're talking about people who are probably selling items to our students, our parents, our community members. And so we wouldn't wanna make that fee so prohibitive that we're then telling a company, well, now you have to charge $1 more for each of your items because of this licensing fee.
Yeah, for example, I had one person reach out and say they were gonna make items and they wanted to give them as gifts to teachers. And I said, well, is this, just a gift, or is this something that you would also wanna sell, kind of like a garage home business kind of a thing? And that was their goal. And I wouldn't want that person who's trying to hustle and make t-shirts or coffee mugs or something out of the garage just because they love our school district to look at a $500 fee or something like that and go, well, I can't do it. I think having a few dollars on the line to ensure that they've read and will abide by the licensing guidelines is good.
So you think that for anybody or for any established business?
Well, that's kind of comes into where do you draw the line? What's a mom and pop, or what's a sole proprietor versus what is a big corporation?
I think $1.5 billion for Kroger is the appropriate number.
Well,
Cause isn't that what the lottery is tonight?
yeah,
Is it
yeah,
$1.5
$1.5 billion.
1.5 something billion.
Yeah,
And
but
$500 is for the brick and mortar and, I don't know, a nominal fee for,
yeah, and I don't even know how you
individuals.
divide that line, because that's one of the things that. So if this goes into place and someone calls me up, how do I determine that
What
they're
they have
too
to
big?
pay.
Other than, the example we used was like Kroger or somebody like that. I know what Kroger is.
well,
But,
we probably have, and that's probably as far as we can go tonight.
Well,
Yes.
I have one, I agree
More
with John there, but there's
research.
one more question. Is this something that we would do on an annual basis? If this is a licensing fee for the next 12 months, or would it be in perpetuity?
That's a good idea for Gary to weigh in on if it needs to be annualized, or if it is, as long as you're in compliance, you're blessed and good to go, then.
do you have some examples of what other districts might have done or other entities might have done?
I think on the flat fee arrangement, you're talking like $500, no more than that. On the other one, percent of sales, I can't recall what percent we've applied. Usually that's a negotiation because you're working with a much larger entity who's trying to sell these things. My suggestion would be, you could of course look at it at any time. I don't think it has to be annual. Maybe you set a range or a guideline that, if it's and I don't know how we would define this, but for this purpose, a mom and pop type of Loveland company or company based out of the Loveland City School District, then it's gonna be a maximum of whatever, $1,000, and you let the administration decide, and then they can always bring the agreement to you for approval. So that if you disagreed, that you thought 1,000 was too much and you wanted it to be $100, you could. So maybe establishing just a range of guidelines might be best, because it is gonna be hard to define what is the we know the difference between Kroger and a mom and pop shop downtown, but there's all these other entities in the middle. I think in most cases it'll be clear, but in some it won't be, and that's where the definition gets tough.
Well, and my main goal in all of this is just to make sure that our brand identity is protected, and that people aren't using it in a way that you look at it and go, I don't like how that looks. They're using it in a way that doesn't reflect well on the district. If it's $5, if it's $500, whatever. It's not a big revenue source. I'd like it to be not prohibitive for anybody to say. I'd rather have them sign on the line and say, we're gonna use it in the right way, than look at it and go, that's too much money, I don't wanna do it that way.
Maybe we could have, when we get into more of this discussion, have a sense of how many entities we're talking about at the current time? I mean,
That's one thing that I could not give you a number for, cause I mean, without surveying and going around and seeing where things come from, because we don't have any baseline to start from.
We'd be able to come up with probably 5 of the largest vendors that deal with what we've got with athletics and so forth, and give us a start with the conversation, but in terms of everything, we wouldn't know everything.
no, I
Yeah.
wouldn't think everything, but if we had a sense of, we think we have, you know, this many to start with, but, you know, if we're gonna have the fee, we're gonna have to find them somewhere. Do you know what I mean? We're gonna have to,
Yeah,
we'll have to
You're
find
right.
out who
You
they
have
are.
Kroger, Walgreens, Meyer, they
Right.
all will have levels. I don't know who even produces that stuff or, you know,
Yeah.
how that's, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, like, even like the shirt Rob's wearing, it's a Nike shirt, but with the logo on it, you could go to a vendor who could get you that shirt and they'll put anything you want on it.
Yeah.
right,
So you could just be a person at home only intending it for yourself and do just that.
right. It's a road trip. Board's going on a road trip, going around town. looking
Where'd you get that shirt?
Yeah.
well, that's it, I think we create a lot of stuff also at our request.
Right,
And that's another question, is if we're asking a vendor to create it for us, that they inherently have our approval to
Right.
do it.
Yeah, and that's for you to have and distribute to your employees or students or whoever's going to have them. It's different though when a vendor just takes the logo, puts it on their own things and sells it to the whole world.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay,
Anything else?
sounds good.
All right, thank you. All right, that's the ending of any items that were on the beginning portion of our meeting. We would now be asking for a resolution to enter into executive session. I will note that the executive session is requested under ORC section 121.22G1, which is employment and compensation of a public employee. I do think we're also planning on talking about negotiated agreement, so I don't know if that's a different number, but I will state that. And we are going to ask that our legal counsel come into the executive session. We will also be asking Mr. Giuffre, Mr. Broadwater, and Mr. Carler, are you coming, and Stacy as well, so we'll be having different people at different times in executive, so you understand what you're asking for. All right, so do we have a motion to enter into executive session in accordance with ORC section 121.22G1?
So moved.
I heard Mrs.
Second.
Washburn,
I second
and
you.
then, no, I'm gonna give it to Reverend Island. But you can fight over it later. All right, can we vote on that, Mr. Giuffre?
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eiler.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Dr. Schweitzer.
Yes.
Motion carried. We are going into executive session at 6:38. And we will be moving down the hall to the superintendent's office. So this will stop the recording of the public portion of the meeting.
Not flickering.
All right, so we are back in public session. We came out of executive session at 8:54.
I'm sorry, did we check the door? Thanks. Go ahead, Mike doesn't need to be
It's still unlocked. It was
It should
set
be.
to
We
be
just-
unlocked till 10,
yeah.
but
here. Okay,
Wanna
Yeah.
make sure.
I don't want any
Yes.
problems,
thank you.
thank you.
So while we're checking on that, all we have to do for the end of the meeting would be a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Schweitzer and Washburn.
Where were you in there, John?
Should we wait for our vote until Mike comes back?
No, we're recording, it'll be
Okay.
on the, I tell you guys are having way too much fun at this meeting tonight. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried, meeting adjourned at 8:55.
Very good.
Nice.
Remember the camera's on still, so I'm gonna go,
So we shouldn't do silly dances.
Red button on top.